Hi, we're good. Hi, my name's Tony. I'm a member of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. I'm a member here in New Orleans and have been for, I think, under a year now. Thank you all for joining us today for a conversation about mutual aid and building power in here in New Orleans. Um, so I've introduced myself, Tony Jones. I use she and her pronouns. I have some speakers joining me today. Right now, we have Jenna from uh, New Orleans Mutual Aid Society and Jasmine from Southern Solidarity. Um, you know, I am so grateful to have this conversation here today because we get to talk about work that's been happening in the wake of COVID-19 and the economic crisis that has followed. Since we got word of this pandemic hitting just our area, it's been very clear that the cowards that be, or the powers that be, have been slow to respond to the needs of the people, and that almost immediately we saw efforts coming from all spheres of the working class, organizing to provide for and care for our people in this unprecedented time. So today, I'm so glad to be able to talk about what that work has looked like and what it has meant to people, and what kind of do we think this is all going to lead up to. And final panelist is just coming in now. I want to introduce Dorton, who's a member of People's Defense League of South Louisiana, who will also be joining us today, talking about their work. Before we get into this conversation, I just want to talk about a little bit about what the work that I've personally been involved with in mutual aid, outside of the work that we'll be talking about today, just because it's so important and dear to my heart, the struggle for the struggle that centers transgender people. As a trans woman myself, if there is hardships faced by sectors of the working class, it's even more so by the sectors of the working class who face gender oppression, and especially those transgender people who face gender oppression. And immediately when it became clear that everyone was losing work and that people would face hardships involved with housing and even any basic needs that someone would have, like getting hormone therapy or buying food. Leaders of the transgender community in New Orleans got together and they created the TGNC People's COVID Crisis Fund. That fund was able to raise over $21,000 to give directly into the hands of TGNC people in the city. And I think that I just wanted to take this moment before we get to this conversation to highlight that work and to highlight how what that means, and how this is a historic moment for TGNC folks, because we've never before seen this level of capacity to organize amongst ourselves and support ourselves, and to be just regarded as inherently valuable and worthwhile human beings in the society. One story that I learned from the TGNC People's COVID Crisis Fund from my comrade Dylan, who was the one engaged in that struggle, was hearing, about the immense work that went into communicating with members of the community to find out who needed what and how to get them what they needed, even beyond getting the funds themselves, negotiating with landlords, for instance, to keep people from being evicted. This is the only way that we are able to support each other and stay active in the struggle, because I know without similar types of support that my ability to organize would have been hampered. So I wanted to shout that out, and also I wanted to shout out the work that has followed the TGNC People's COVID Crisis Fund, which is which has been also tremendous and historic. I'm referring to the House of Tulip, which I am a founding member of. And just to shout out all the trans folks who are on the Founders Circle, who are able to make this happen. And I'll explain what House of Tulip is in a moment. I want to shout out Mariah Moore, Milan Nicole Sherry, Jay Celestial, Sultana Asham, Camilla Machina, Dylan Wagersback, Ben Collingwood, myself, Zahir Martinez, and Spirit McIntyre. These folks have been, leaders in caring for and fighting for the people in our community, and really trans people don't get the support that we need. So yeah, I just want to take a second to shout out House of Tulip. It's an organization that's organizing around developing a community land trust in order to provide zero, I forget the exact term, I'm blanking on it, but it's no barrier housing for trans folks who, who are in an emergency housing situation, who need it. So far, we've raised over $400,000 towards this goal. And if you wanted to donate to that, we'll have the donation link in the comments. Just like, I think, just a really important part of the struggle, because without, like I said, without having the people supported, there can be no revolutionaries amongst the people. Yeah, so shout out to House of Tulips, shout out to People's Team Unity COVID Crisis Fund. But with that, shout it out, let's go ahead and introduce these panelists today. So I kind of have an opening question for everyone here. I kind of want to hear from, instead of sitting here and defining for my understanding of what mutual aid is, I kind of want to hear from, you folks who have been at the head of the struggle. What do you all think mutual aid is? Can you describe for me in your own words, like your organization and the work that you do? And we can start off with Jenna, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't mind at all. Hey, everybody, my name is Jasmine Grant. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm a co-founder of New Orleans Mutual Aid Society, which is really strange to say because at the beginning of this year, I didn't think I would be co-founding anything. But when this COVID crisis began in March, or at least began to affect New Orleans in March, my friends and I got together and we decided that we didn't want to sit idly by and watch the government fail people again and again and again. People we knew and predicted would be those who had the least access to services already. So it would be Black people, it would be trans people, it would be immigrants, people who are undocumented. And we were a group of people who knew each other through prison abolition work. And we learned about mutual aid through Miriam Kaba, who's a prominent prison abolitionist. And she thought of mutual aid as a tool for abolition, because it's this idea of we as a community can get together and take care of each other's needs outside of the government, outside of handouts, outside of the police. And so it's this answer to the question abolitionists often get, which is how do we keep each other safe? And the answer is mutual aid in a big way. It's taking care of each other radically and without judgment. So our mutual aid project is really centered in that. It's centered in being there for one another, despite differences in socioeconomic class, despite differences in race, despite differences in ability. We want to foster a community of care and grow out those communities of care. So I think for me, mutual aid is really digging deep into how we can take care of one another without letting normal barriers of society get in the way.
Muted. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm gonna toss the question to you, Jasmine. What is mutual aid? Can you describe your organization, the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on, let me see. Okay. Hi, my name is Jasmine Grant. I am an abolitionist here in New Orleans. I've been organizing here for the last 7 years. I started out in the education landscape, and since the pandemic began, I've been working with unhoused people and organizing with them through a mutual aid group called Southern Solidarity. Southern Solidarity is a group of 50 anti-imperialists who've come together to provide direct relief to up to 300 unhoused folks in the downtown area of New Orleans. We're also involved in actively dismantling or helping to dismantle the forces of oppression that cause homelessness to begin with. And I think, yeah, that's a really big question. Mutual aid is a way to solidify our networks of care and express solidarity. Unlike charity and government programs, mutual aid allows folks who have a deep understanding of the forces that are oppressing people to organize and come together and to reshift the focus of our society on cooperation rather than what it is now, which is human sacrifice. Right now, our economy functions on human sacrifice. So that's things like the military industrial complex, that's things like the prison industrial complex. All of these things are centered on death, and they're centered on capture. They're centered on competition. They're centered on disabling our ability to transform and grow. So these spaces, these carceral spaces, end up creating static spaces where individuals can't self-actualize and can't determine for themselves the trajectory of their life. I think that at its root, mutual aid is a way for us to express our solidarity and also to engage in an activity around care in a way that the right is also engaging in activity around murder and death. So this gives us a way to counteract what's the organizing that's happening with the right. Thank you.
No, thank you. Oh my goodness. Every time you talk, I feel like I should be having a pen and notebook and just be taking some notes because, you really showing some knowledge. And finally, Dorton, if you're ready, the question I have for you is, what is mutual aid or serve the people work? What is your organization? What does this work look like to you?
All right. So I'm Dorton of PDL, People's Defense League, and what we do is we are a socialist community defense organization. And an essential part of community defense is armed defense, food security, arms training, with a revolutionary background. And we are building solidarity with our communities and empower people to defend themselves against fascists and white supremacists. And that's kind of where this ties into mutual aid, because ultimately, and this will be somewhat short, movements can't defend themselves. Mutual aid cannot defend itself if we don't have the means to survive, to defend ourselves. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. I feel like I'm gonna want to dig into, those thoughts around what is mutual aid as defense, and what does community defense look like as opposed to self-defense. I just feel like there's some questions that bubble to my head when I think about those things. Thank you all so much.
Of course.
Yeah. So next up, we're just gonna get to the meat of this. I have some questions that I'm going to throw out to each one of y'all, and feel free to respond. If you don't like the way the question is worded or something, feel free to pass. But also, once someone has answered their question, you can feel free to hop in as well and add your 2 cents and 2 thoughts if you feel so inclined to. Yeah, really, I just wanted this to be a casual way for us to, just get to pause, reflect on what we've been doing, and to just like cross-pollinate with ideas. So first question, I'm gonna toss up to Jenna. No, I've already done that once. I'm not gonna pick on you twice. Let me switch that up. First question, I'm gonna toss to Jasmine. Yeah, this is like gonna get to like the one-on-ones of like what this work looks like. I am curious, how did you identify the unhoused folk as like the sector of society that you felt needed to be served in this moment? How did you find others who are also eager to like join in with that, with you in that work?
Yeah. So the unhoused are often neglected by the government, especially in New Orleans, where there's not enough mental health services. There's not enough harms reduction services to provide direct relief for unhoused people. So it felt like the need was very great there. And I feel like in the left, there's a tendency to ignore people that we say we want to advocate for, such as sex workers, trans people, unhoused people. And that isn't to say that these groups aren't organizing themselves, they definitely are, but I think that the left sometimes leaves them out of organizing or organizing with them. So I really wanted to tap into that group and listen to their needs and help them in their organizing work. This also helps organizers be attuned to the needs of the most oppressed so that they can lead this movement. So that is why I focused on unhoused people and am organizing with unhoused people right now. And what was your other question?
So two things I'm curious about is when serving the unhoused folk, like how did you determine what were the needs of that community? Like how, like did you hear from like, these masses, and like how did you like, take that in and turn that into like a program that could serve the people? And also I'm curious as to how did you find the support in order to do this work?
Yeah, I think what's unique about Southern Solidarity is that every day we're going out on distribution, we're handing out things that are related to direct relief. And while we're doing that, we're connecting with folks and we're listening to their needs. So they might have a conversation with us where they say, I'm an artist. And so the next day we come with art supplies for them. And that's as easy as it is, listening to people and their needs is how you understand what they need. So that's the first part of your question. The second part, so Facebook has, and other social media sites have been a route for organizing. Right now, the right is using social media to organize. And so, we need to be very actively using social media as well to counteract their efforts. During the Arab Spring, Facebook was used to organize. And so I went to Facebook to rally folks together who already had an eye toward organizing.
Right on, succinct and like direct to the point. Thank you. Okay, so Jenna, I am curious. So when I was like Googling New Orleans Mutual Aid Society, and in order to just like make sure I understood who y'all are, what the work that y'all did, I saw like one of the things that first pops up in the search algorithm is that y'all are listed on the VidiNOLA.gov website as like, oh, if you need a resource during these times, go to New Orleans Mutual Aid Society. And so like I'm curious, like why do you feel that you're a relatively like new organization of working class people can provide for folks and can do what the city of New Orleans either is incapable of doing or is unwilling of doing?
Yeah, so clearly that's an awesome question because it's the whole point of why we started. So initially our vision for this mutual aid project was that it would be small and neighborhood based, and that we wouldn't necessarily grow, but that we would be something for other groups to look to as they were creating their own, what Miriam Kaba calls pods. So, and now pods is like this thing that we're hearing about, like, oh, you have your COVID-19 pod. But we were thinking about it back then as like, oh, these people are taking care of this neighborhood together. So it's like this small, like, maybe it would not even be an entire neighborhood, but it would be like 30 people who all live in the same block taking care of each other's needs. And then that would just sort of like create a network in all these different neighborhoods. But what we found was that people were not actually willing to take the initiative to do that. People, when it's a pandemic, people like look inwards, right? They see how they can maintain what they have and what their family has and what their friends need. They have pods already and they aren't interested really necessarily in leading an outward facing pod. And so we had a lot of people in our pod who didn't actually need anything, who were like really willing to supply things, but not really needing much. And so we realized that we could go to the city and say, here's this small group of people who's willing to help. Let people know that we exist. And to this day, we get calls from people through the city who still are hungry. They are still without food, and the city does not have a way to take care of them, despite all of these like new programs and the No More Hunger Task Force, all this stuff, these initiatives that the city are putting in place are simply inadequate. And so we saw ourselves as sort of the anti-government, and the other reason why we wanted to be available to people who were seeking services through 311, through the city of New Orleans, is because we wanted to provide an opportunity for people to see what it was like to actually be in a community of care and not to be given a handout, because it's a different experience, or else we wouldn't even be doing it. It's a politically different experience. It feels different. And so the city, I don't think, is interested in that at all. They're barely even interested in making sure people have food. So why should they be interested in making sure people also felt seen and loved, which is something that has been our priority from the very beginning, is how do we actually be in relationship with people despite or outside of just their food needs? How do we see them as whole people?
Do you mind if I follow that up with another question? Just to, I don't know, it kind of like has things bubbling in my head. For instance, like that last thing you said about like creating relationships with people outside of like, a base need of hunger. How do you feel that like, the work that you've been doing has allowed you to like, like create relationships and have conversations that like do have a different perspective on like society and what we need? I don't know. That was kind of a messy way to say that, but
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. So there's two things that come to my mind immediately. One, at the beginning of this project, we were doing exclusively deliveries, because I don't know if y'all remember, but there was a time where we were like not allowed to leave our homes except to do like essential things. So during that time, we were exclusively delivering to people, and we would call them. Everyone that we delivered to, we called them once a week and we chatted. And we had a whole like community of people calling other people to ask, how's the food? Are you enjoying the food that you're getting? Because it was all being made by other people in our neighborhood who would make the food, drop it off at a central location, and we would distribute it throughout the city. But also on those calls, it was, how's your week look? How's your daughter? I know that we're delivering to her an X, just these sorts of conversations that people were surprised to have. We prayed a lot with people, a lot. Two of the founding members of this organization are actually pastors. So there's this like underlying of faith stuff that's happening with our organization too, that's really just like beautiful and people love. And we are still delivering to some people that we started delivering to in March. So like we know them and they know us. They have our phone numbers and they call us. And it's a beautiful thing. People that I would never know otherwise. So that's the first way. The second way is once we decided to change our model, we actually now have a drop-off location and a pickup location in Mid-City, Louisiana, New Orleans. So now people come to our door to pick up food. And in that way, we actually get to share space together. You know, we're masked and everybody has to use hand sanitizers and we're taking COVID precautions, but we get to share space. And so we get to put up things in the space that say like abolition now, and then have a conversation with the person coming to pick up about like, what is abolition? And also talk to them about what's going on in the neighborhood, specifically where we're located. And so it's not just, oh, I'm gonna wait in this line and be handed some food and then I'll come back next week. People are welcome to come every day. Some of them do. And it's become not just about food for them. It's definitely become about socializing and getting out of their house, and seeing people who know their name. And that is why we did this project in the first place.
Thank you. That was delicious. That kind of got like, a layer under that like I'm totally like shooting for. For those folks who are watching, you can model that same behavior of asking questions that kind of like, you get interested by from hearing. Feel free to just, such a messy way to say that. Feel free to just write any questions you do have in the comment section, and we'll be able to get to a few of those at the end of this discussion. So yeah, and I'm gonna go ahead and ask another question. I kind of hinted at it earlier, Dorton, but I do want to actually get an answer to like, what do you feel the relationship between the theory and mindset that People's Defense League has around community defense, and how is that related to the people's grocery program that y'all have active at the moment?
I'm not being quiet on purpose. I just want to really give you a nuanced answer. So, how much do you know about community defense?
I feel there's going to be people watching who don't, who might be curious as to like what you have to say about what is community.
Yeah, I just want to get a little bit of basics, just a few quick points from you.
Yeah, I can play along. To me, community defense looks like, it's like a mindset that's like, in order for like, me to be safe, we got to be safe. So we got to be taken care of. We got to be defended. We have to keep an eye out. We gotta look out, for each other in the way we have been doing for such a long time. And like, the traditions that we have developed around, doing what's necessary to protect ourselves, which means like sometimes like, well, not just sometimes, but like being armed and ready to, defend ourselves against the violent forces that exist.
Yeah. And like part of that is things like armed training, making community gardens, having real food security, because our People's Grocery Program is based on the same stuff that the Panthers were doing back in the day with their grocery program, keeping the community fed and teaching them political education and building solidarity with them. They're going hand in hand. How can you really teach people to defend themselves if they're starving to the point where they just can't even hold a rifle or pistol or anything like that? How can someone fight when they can't find their meal the next day? And there is an image in a lot of people's head, even on the left these days, that all community defense is, it's just a bunch of, people hoarding ammo and beans in some shed somewhere, waiting for the apocalypse to go around. But that's not what it is at all. we're really just building that solidarity so our communities could be protected when the time is ready. Because we can build all this up, but we've seen in history that a single day, a few fascists, white supremacists, some agents of the state could come along and just wipe out everything that you build up just because you haven't had the means to defend yourselves. And that's what community defense is.
Thank you. And y'all definitely just like, like show that through y'all actions in the way y'all serve community every day. Yeah, I think, on my short list of comrades, People's Defense League has been, definitely ready to like, be amongst the people and to serve and to, help out with other organizations where they've needed it. Like one like funny, like, just like kind of experience I was having before hopping on the call was like, like going through like my little red book of like mileposts to kind of like get me thinking about like, like what is a revolutionary mindset that we have like about like having this work, about like, like being amongst and serving the people. And, when I was thinking about PDL and you guys, this one quote stuck out. It's pretty straightforward, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to read out the little red book. So the quote is, "Wherever our comrades go, they must build good relations with the masses, be concerned for them, and help them overcome their difficulties. We must unite with the masses. The more the masses we unite with, the better." And that's from 1945. But yeah, just saying what you just said there, definitely like rings true in like my understanding of like, like what it means to, mix our revolutionary mindset with our like active, just being amongst and serving, our family, friends, and the general people we live with. Yeah, sorry.
No, no, it's good. I like that a lot.
Thanks. I appreciate that. So let's hit up these last few questions. So thinking about, Mao, I think of another phrase, the it's right to rebel. And when I think about this summer, there's been a lot of rebellion. So this question is going to be for Jasmine. I'm just going to read it verbatim. So this summer, a number of Black people have been murdered by police. Rebellions across the country have invoked the names of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Tony McDade. Across this country, we've seen campaigns demanding community control of the police. You've seen slogans like abolish the police and defund the police become popular. Do you see that the work that you're doing with mutual aid as being part of like this like Black struggle for accountability and for self-determination? And if so, like, what is that relationship?
Yeah, so I think that we are definitely tied to the role that abolitionists are playing right now. We ourselves are working to create abolition spaces as a socio community, and that looks like us building libraries, opening book centers. That looks like us opening or starting farms, which we're in the process of beginning as a grassroots organization. So when we talk about abolition, we have to think about it holistically, right? When we're talking about abolishing the police, we have to be building as well as working towards dismantling and agitating the system. So that's what the building part looks like. It looks like PDL has been actively involved in arming civilians and making sure that we're protected and protecting ourselves. We sometimes get phone calls from people in the community asking us to handle any conflicts that arise within the unhoused community. For instance, if an unhoused person is in front of someone's house, we're the ones that people call instead of the police now. And that's the kind of culture that we want to create in New Orleans, a way for people to have folks that they call to hold other people accountable who are trained. So yeah.
Right on. I just like love the way, you know, we like see ourselves like actively moving to, you know, provide concrete answers and, you know, concrete like just solutions to the problems at play, that like we're involved in the struggle in a way that doesn't just look like, you know, talking and marching, but doing and working and struggling. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, this next question is going to be a bit of a shift. Jenna, this is just like a thought that I was having earlier today. You know, I feel like I wish I want to get better at my citation practice because I'm terrible at it. But I don't know if it was on social media or if it just was like came out of like the muses. But I was introduced to this like concept of some folks feeling that the mutual aid work that, you know, we are doing in this moment is connected to, you know, the work that we do like all the time, like the work we're not just doing in times of crisis, but that like, you know, that members of our community like have been doing and will continue doing. I think about how like this question of whether or not like mutual aid work reflects the, you know, mass amount, like reflects the reality of like the reproductive labor that, you know, is done in society that largely goes you know, like unacknowledged, like unpaid, and or if it is paid, underpaid. So like, you know, when I'm saying reproductive labor, I think about the, you know, work that's largely been considered by patriarchy to be women's work, like caretaking, child raising, caring for the elderly. Do you feel that like, you know, there might be this like connection between like this like reproductive labor that we do like all the time and this like mutual aid work that's happening now? Just in my own eyes, it seems like a lot of the people at the forefront of this mutual aid work have been, you know, gender non-conforming people or like women or trans folks, you know, the types of people I normally, you know, would associate with like reproductive labor.
Yeah, so that's a beautiful connection, Tony. Thank you for drawing that. I think it's very clear that the work, especially, I mean, it's interesting because the three organizations who are on this call were all based in New Orleans, and we're all doing food, mutual aid around food, which partially speaks to the like intense food insecurity that was happening in New Orleans well before, you know, COVID-19, well before. But also there's this connection between like, oh, okay, who fed me when I was a kid? Like who in my home brought me food? And it was my mom. And who like feeds, who works in soup kitchens, and like who actually works at restaurants, who is doing this care work in all different types of ways. And it's, like you said, it's women and it's trans folks and it's gender nonconforming people who take on that labor, which makes mutual aid, like the genderization of mutual aid is really interesting. It's not something I've thought a lot about, but it is like a very true thing that this is not work that we're paid for. Obviously, it's mutual aid. And like, it's almost like a reclamation of how this care work that's already happening in our communities and is already being done for free. Now, like, we get to do it for each other for free and not just for who society says we should do it for. So what do I mean by that? I mean, I'm not just bringing food to a child, my child. I'm bringing food to somebody else's child who then brings food to me to give to someone. You know, it's like this beautiful network of care that we get to choose who is in that network and reclaim this like free labor because we're doing it for each other, not just because society says that's my role. The other thing that your comment made me think about is how people who we are now in community with, how they've been taking care of each other for so long without the government, well before we came on the scene, right? And what we get to do is we get to amplify that because we can connect communities of care that already exist to other people who weren't plugged in and might have more resources. But really, we're just mirroring work that has already existed. And it makes me think about what's going on with the recovery for Hurricane Laura right now. It makes me think about how in this city, in this area of the state, we do mutual aid for each other after hurricanes automatically. That's what we do. We go and we help gut houses automatically. And so the spirit of mutual aid is like within all of us. You know, my very Republican father does mutual aid in that way after hurricanes, right? It's not like a political thing. It's we get to take care of each other. And it's already ingrained. Whether it's because of your gender or whether it's because of where you live. But yeah, it's something that we do for each other. I think I might have gotten a little bit off track, but I'm drinking tea, so I don't know, the caffeine's rolling.
No, thank you. Your perspective was like, you know, enlightening. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. So you've mentioned, you know, the recent hurricane that has hit Southwest Louisiana, Hurricane Laura, which news is saying that it's the strongest hurricane to hit Louisiana in over 100 odd years. So when I think about that, and I think about this legacy of mutual aid that you're, talking about and reminding of us here in the space, I have a question that I wanted to throw to Dorton as someone, who's like, like from in Louisiana and, is familiar with like the type of work that has been done in that realm. I wanted to ask you, like, today is August 28th, right? Tomorrow is the 15th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. We saw that like after Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans, elders in our communities, revolutionary-minded Black men like Malcolm Suber and Malik Rahim, were a part of organizations like the People's Hurricane Relief Fund and Common Ground, respectively. What do you feel like? Do you feel like the work? How do I phrase this? Considering like this legacy, what do you feel mutual aid that is done today? Like, I'm tripping over my words. I apologize. How do you feel that the work that you're doing today inherits from that tradition, and what do you feel that mutual aid has to offer us? Considering that these natural disasters, these economic disasters, these, the disaster caused by capitalism's inability to provide for us. What do you think that mutual aid, what role does mutual aid has for us, in this environment of disaster capitalism?
I think what our mutual aid inherits is we cannot rely on the state for basically anything, because whenever Katrina did come by, it took us such a long time to get FEMA in, and meanwhile mutual aid was rampant. People in our communities were supporting each other better than the state could. And honestly, a lot of us probably would have died out there if a lot of these mutual aid programs didn't get to work really. And hell, before any state programs were really mobilizing for Laura, I saw mutual aid programs, on the front lines getting ready to really go out there and just show support where they can.
Right, that's so true. Yeah, Katrina happened so like long ago for me. I felt that I was like so young when that happened, but like even as a young person, someone who was in the fourth grade, uh, some of my memories about how people responded to that like were like my like older sibling volunteering with Common Ground to like be part of that relief effort, and part of it lives like and like like inside of my head as like stories I heard about how radical organizers had a library up and running in the city before the state ever could like get their library up and running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're really going to have to build on that even more and more into the future as this state and its programs start to break down further and further. We really are going to have to rely more and more on our community and cement our supply lines within those communities so we can really just, you know, grab those resources and just distribute them when they're needed. So we're really going to have to build at that even more than ever now. We do have the basis to do this. So we really have to thank our predecessors for this.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a couple extra questions for y'all, if y'all don't mind. Y'all can take them or pass them. Don't feel like, I'm telling you, don't feel bad if y'all just all decide to just like pass on these. I just wanted to see if like, they caught with anyone. And I'll just throw them out, and if anyone has an answer, feel free to just like respond. So this first lanyard question is, I want to know, like in this work, have like y'all made mistakes? And if y'all had, like what kind of mistakes did y'all make? And what lessons did y'all learn from them?
I can start with that one. I think a lot of times we, as folks involved in mutual aid, end up replicating colonizer behavior, and that looks like engaging in savior complex. And so I think that tangibly played out as us feeling that we could provide everything in the moment right away for people. And that is coming from the savior mentality that kind of needs to be broken down. As organizers, we first need to assess what we have and then communicate that to folks and then hear their needs so that we are able to, provide what is possible within that realm, and then continue to ask the community and grow as the needs arise. But the idea of us providing everything for everyone all at once is kind of working on colonizer mentality. And so we, as an organization, did training around unpacking and unlearning savior mentalities.
Yeah, I think pretty similarly, there's this like hope or like dream, or really it's hubris that, oh, there can't be that much need, like we can do it all. That's just not true and is actually harmful. And so we had similar struggles of, we want to answer every call. We want to deliver to everybody who needs our help. And what I mean by answer every call, we do answer every call, but we had this urge to like be there for everyone, and also to be there in like this really intense way. So we had to actually restructure the way that we were doing things. And we shied away from this like delivering from, all the way from the West Bank to Metairie, which is what we were doing for a very long time, and turn towards back towards the neighborhood model of who is in our neighborhood who would need some food, and who is in our neighborhood who can provide some food, and how can we be just a hub of food that then goes back into the very neighborhood where it came from. And so by like restructuring, we've gotten to build deeper relationships. And we still do deliver to people who are unable to pick up food from us, especially people who are like currently experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and cannot work, etc. So like emergency food deliveries. But by focusing in and going small, right? Going back to what we hope to be, which is a small group of people, helping a small group of people with them. We are living our dream more and more every day. And it's really amazing. And that's not to say that we won't get too big for our britches again, because we are people. But one thing that I really love is that we get to engage together. There's an open dialogue with everyone in the community, where we can really reflect on how we're doing, and what we need to shift again. So yeah, I think being reflective is super important. I know that people are asking in the chat, like, oh, what if I want to do this where I am? And so for y'all, think about how you are focusing on the small, and how that small is going to grow metaphorically, right? Like how treating one person with complete compassion and care is going to grow compassion in you and that person, and then that compassion will grow. Those sorts of things are super, super important, and it's like the point. It's like why we do it.
Cool. I have one more question that I want to ask before I open it up to some of these audience questions. This one is kind of like a question that's like looking ahead. You know, we've got to talk about a lot of like what we've experienced and like, you know, like how we view the work that we've been doing and the experiences that we've had. But I'm curious about, you know, what do we all think about? What are the challenges ahead of us? And what are the opportunities ahead of us, you know, for those of us who are doing this like type of work in New Orleans?
Basically, the biggest challenge I see is just building power to really challenge the state, to really fill in the roles that they can't provide for the people. And once we become big enough, we're going to be more legitimate in the hands of, well, in the eyes of our community than the state is. In some cases, that's already happening. So we're just really going to have to build up on that. And that's going to be our, not give in to just simple communism, and just making sure that the masses, they radicalize with us. I think that's a big challenge we're going to be facing.
Yeah, I think like you're saying, we need to stop centering, the challenge is to stop centering the logic of the oppressor, and to stop responding to and talking to and negotiating with the oppressor. Right now, we have to center our own activities of mutual aid, and create a culture around centering the oppressed with liberatory actions. And I think that what we're doing is nothing new. There's so much precedence, as everyone in this group has said, right? The Unemployed Councils was an organization that was started within the communist organization after the 30s, when there was thousands of dispossessed people across cities in America. And this was multiracial councils that were formed to fight evictions and to provide direct relief for the dispossessed. And these were the dispossessed organizing the dispossessed. So there's a lot of precedence for what we do. And not only that, but what we do in these local neighborhoods end up inspiring government programs and social safety nets that are nationalized, like the Black Panthers inspired the WIC. The Unemployed Council inspired Social Security safety nets. So our work can be so localized, like you're saying, Jenna, but then can end up inspiring national programs.
Yeah, and I think for NOMAS, our biggest upcoming challenge is definitely capacity, not ours personally, but like the communities, things are about to get really rough, I think. They already have, but I do have this fear of worsening conditions for people. And again, people, whenever they are challenged in this way, might feel the need to like stay inward. And so that presents an opportunity for us to really organize our neighborhood, to really like spread this vision of community care, to get even more intimate with who we are so that we can share who we are with the people around us. And that's really like a beautiful opportunity to share the values of love and care. It's great. It's awesome.
Thank y'all. Yeah, affirmations to everything y'all have been saying. I agree. We need to be building dual power. Like we need the power to, you know, be like a force for the working class, like outside of just the regular state actors. And I agree, we need to be changing the culture. We need to be propagating more of a revolutionary outlook on, you know, why things are the way they are and how can we change society to be something better and that works in our interests instead of in the interests of our oppressors. If you all humor me, I want to take just a few more minutes to answer some of these questions from the folks that have been, you know, so kindly watching and supporting us in the chat. The first question that I have is, what are some ways you can support if we're not in New Orleans? And anyone can answer that if you want.
Just donate a few dollars financially. Like we all got links. We need to get these programs going. Just donate. And if you don't have the means to donate, you can just start talking to your community and use our model. Of course, fit them to your actual material conditions and just try to replicate something similar in your own communities. But that's what I say you can do.
Yeah, and I feel like if we're gonna say replicate what we're doing, then I think that there's a responsibility on our end to really be clear about what we're doing, because we don't want folks just starting mutual aid programs that replicate colonizer behavior, right? So what we've done is we've assessed a need in our community, and then we've actively engaged in listening to dispossessed folks, and we've actively engaged in political education. And most of the members in all of our groups are aware of the systemic oppressions and the forces that we have to dismantle alongside the direct relief work.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if this got shared in the chat, but Mutual Aid Disaster Relief has a really great toolkit that is at the beginnings of what it means to start a mutual aid network in your community. And so, right, so I'm with Dorton and I'm with Jasmine. If you're not here and you want to help here, donate. If you want to help where you are also, because wherever you are needs mutual aid. And so there are ways for you to really dig deep, dig down, and root yourself where you are and help. And in a way that is not charity, but in a way that is gathering people to you. And we are all coming together to share what we need and to share how we can help.
Beautiful. Thanks y'all for answering. Yeah, and I feel like those questions kind of answered another question that we had in the chat, and just generally the way I've been talking. As answered this question of how can someone start mutual aid efforts in our own area? Where do I begin? Yeah, if anyone has any extra thoughts that they just want to sprinkle in there, you can feel free to do so now.
Yeah, I wrote something with a group of other researchers on what mutual aid is. And so I think that's a great starting point for folks to understand that mutual aid is something rooted in cooperation that has existed since, we've been existing. So I will share that article in the chat and folks can share it. Hold on.
And just on like a practical note, again, this made sense for our neighborhood, but something else might make sense for where you are. We flyered because we didn't know what people would need until we asked. So we put on a flyer, hey, call us, email us, knock on our door, and tell us what you're needing and tell us what you have. And that's how we identified that food was the thing that people needed. Because before we did that, I never would have imagined that food would become my life. I mean, I'm a prison abolitionist and I work around prisons. But when I asked my neighbors what they needed and they said food, that's what we did. So you might be surprised about what's going on in your neighborhood, and that is like a one way to figure it out.
Yeah, definitely. From the masses to the masses. Yeah, I agree with that strategy. Thank y'all. Just a couple more questions from the chat. Dorton, I'm going to toss this one to you real quick, in case you have an answer just on top of your head. Are there books we can read to learn more about community defense?
Miles Guerrilla Warfare.
Well, there you go, people. Miles Guerrilla Warfare. Go check it out and learn yourself something about community defense. So I don't mean to joke over your answer if you had anything else you want to elaborate on. If not, I feel like that's a totally valid, to the point answer.
Damn, there's so much. A lot of the stuff with Black Panthers. For example, Blood in My Eyes, really good, by George Jackson. I also find a little bit of inspiration from Revolutionary Suicide that I read recently by Huey P. Newton. That just kind of fits you into the mentality of kind of why you're doing this to begin with. Because, I mean, there's a chance that you might not live to see the work you're done, but you got to be reassured that by building these things up, someone behind you, someone that you touch, is going to be picking up that flag of revolution in your stead. More than just one person. The community is going to do that just from the work you built up. So, yeah, just really seek the Panthers in their writings, yes, and Miles Guerrilla Warfare, of course.
Thank you. Before I move on, I don't want to just like center Dorton on that one. In case either of you had a thought to that question, feel free to add on if you wanted to. If not, we can move on also.
I think it's a really important question, and that we constantly need to remind ourselves that survival is in our hands. We've been living in states of fugitivity, especially Black folks, and we need to prepare ourselves because there is a war being waged against us. It's a gender, class, and race war. And so we need to look at the political moment as such.
Right on. All right, I think because we're like making such good time, I'm gonna get to these 5, and so there's 2 more left. Then someone's asking a very practical question, and you got a lot of fans in the chat, Dorton. They want to know: do we have a socialist leftist gun club here in New Orleans?
Well, not exactly a gun club, to be honest. If you want to start one, I mean, that'll be pretty good, actually, because we're really a community defense group. We can teach you the one-on-one, and if you really want to.
You have anything else to say?
Yeah, that's about it for that.
For sure. I'm interpreting that as hit you up, essentially.
Yeah, hit us up because if you're interested in a gun club, that only just well highlights us. I mean, I'm pretty sure that no one really wants to go ahead and join the NRA or go into any program with reactionaries and stuff. Yeah, hit us up.
All right, bless. And yeah, thanks everyone who's been sending in questions. We're just gonna hit this. Wait, did we add another one? I don't know. I'm gonna hit this.
We should tackle it.
You want to tackle it? All right, cool. Let's go to the fifth one from the chat. Keep up the good work, comments. A lot of people have been saying really good things about everything y'all are saying. Oh my goodness, I didn't read that before I read it. So sweet. Thank y'all. I feel the love. All right, so let's hit this one, and we'll call it done here. Do you have a plan for a total economic collapse? Wow. Anyone have a thought for that one?
I mean, we are living the plan right now. Everything we've been talking about is in preparation for the newly dispossessed, which are going to be all over America, and which currently are because of 10 decades of austerity. I mean, conditions in this empire has never been easy, right? That's why we are a network of anti-imperialists, because survival has always been in our hands. So we're just care what our ancestors have done. We have to look at things like the Underground Railroad as also extensions of mutual aid and manifestations of mutual aid. And we have to just look at the work that our ancestors have done to draw inspiration. It seems like a very daunting political moment, but there is precedence for acts of solidarity. There is precedence for direct relief and cooperation. And so it seems like a very daunting question, you know, how are you preparing for this economic disaster? We are living the preparation, and that is inspiring in and of itself. I'm constantly inspired by the work that everyone around me is doing.
Yeah, and we get to do it together. Total economic collapse, forthcoming or not, forthcoming. We get to experience that together with all of the highs and lows that being in a community bring. So if you feel isolated, so like there's many ways of forms of wealth, right? And this economic collapse that is happening is going to happen alongside of this spirit of revolution that is obviously already like very much with us. So if this is going to be going away, how can you plug in right now to what's happening in your community so that you are rich and full of these other things, because we're going to need each other. And so, like Jasmine said, practice now. And by practice, I mean do it. Be in community with people because you're going to need them and they're going to need you. And it helps recenter this this sense of doom when you realize that actually there are so many ways in which we are rich. And I know I'm being really like I don't know, cutesy or whatever, but I just think it's true that it's not just about how we're struggling and you get to control this. You don't get to control this. So plug in.
Well, I kind of think having a garden and being able to source for your own, you know, meals, either through hunting, fishing, stuff like that, is a pretty good way to actually prepare for that when the supply chains are down. Just not having to rely on going to a store for your groceries is like imperative, and that's community defense for you.
Thank y'all. That was such a heavy one to end on.
I don't know,
I feel
cutesy
like
or whatever.
how you follow that up. I appreciate y'all for joining me in this conversation. Please, if like, you want your time, support, and money to People's Defense League, South Louisiana, Southern Solidarity, and the New Orleans Mutual Aid Society. Yeah, I am gonna spend the rest of my day, I think, just continuing to pause, reflect on the conversation we've had, and to, not let myself get caught up in the, totality of the economic devastation we are living in. The stocks may be like stable, but I know here in New Orleans and where we live, I've heard the news say upwards of like 30,000 people are facing eviction potentially. And, thinking about that just makes me think back to what Mariah Moore said at a rally that we were all at, well, that all of our organizations were at, like earlier. Mariah was quoting another comrade. I'm sorry, I'm not having a name with me, but just in this like struggle that we've been experiencing, and particularly in the struggle that Black people face, that the work that we do is rooted in joy, ultimately, and that there's a lot of joy to be had and working alongside each other for our mutual interests, and for just being truly in community with each other, and truly seeing each other and hearing each other. So thank y'all so much for giving me this opportunity today to be in community, to see y'all, to be with y'all. I hope y'all take care.